Welcome to Between the Ears, a Ryder Cup recap.
All right, GolfCask Nation, this is Brian Bailie here, and we're bringing you another Between the Ears, and we are with Mike Grevlos. Doc, I know you're a little under the weather, but how's it going out there in sunny and warm South Dakota?
Yeah, I mean, it's been in the 80s. September's been an incredible month. It's like, it's just amazing. But yeah, other than that, just doing a lot of different things. Won't get into all the details, but a lot of good stuff, a lot of things, keeping me busy, so that's good.
All right, busy's a good place to be. And Chris,
Yeah.
Chris George, of course, from Williamsburg. How's it going, Chris?
Very well. Having a great time, enjoying the fall weather here. I can only imagine how nice crisp the mornings are there in Charlottesville.
It's been in the 60s. We've been 60, 80, man. That's for about a month. I mean, September for us has been, this is a weird fall, but I'll take it. And we haven't gotten much rain, so we haven't got much rain in the last 2 years, but it's pretty good living. Bad for the crops, good for the golfer. So we're going to jump in here and we're going to talk kind of a Ryder Cup roundup. So we were going to come on before the Ryder Cup and talk about team and all that. We'll tie that into here as well. But since now we know what happened, and of course how the Europeans absolutely whooped America, even though it was closed on the last day, that was a whooping that Europe put on the United States. So just kind of a rough outline. What did you think of the event, Chris? And then we'll go over to Mike.
Well, I think the high level of it is congrats, Europe. You guys played amazing. Your pairing in the foursomes were phenomenal, by the way. However, the U.S. could have probably done quite a better job. And then the four balls were good. And then Sunday we had a good match play event, single against single, and it made it interesting. But however, we were just quite a bit too far behind to even make it really, really worthy of a good win for the U.S. But nonetheless, congrats, Europe. You did a great job.
Yeah. How about you, Mike? What were your thoughts on the domination and then almost loss and then loss?
Yeah, I actually was surprised about Sunday. I didn't realize that U.S. is going to win so much. I guess like Shane Lowry, I thought the Europeans were going to win in the first six matches, and so yeah. But that was a lot of fun. I was around my family, and everybody's pretty excited about all the putts going in there on 18, and just giving a sliver of hope and recognizing that it really could happen. There was some hope. There's no doubt there it was. But even when you heard the interviews with some of the players that had already finished from the U.S., they were even saying, well, there's still some. But it wasn't as if they were too excited about the possibility of really winning there. And then, of course, the issue with the rule, the envelope rule, and Victor Hovland not being able to play. I'm sure that was definitely a part of our conversation in our house. And kind of the consensus among many in our house was that it's too bad we have that, but what do you do? I don't know what's the best way of dealing with it. It's a really tough situation. I know the Solheim Cup has a different way of going about it, but yeah, that's a tough one. Maybe we'll get to that today on what you guys think of that. But
yeah, the rule's the rule.
That was
you went into the event knowing what the rule was. It doesn't bug me, but if that's something they look to change in the future, I believe that would probably be a pretty good call. Especially because if it would have come down to that half a point, that would have been hard to digest.
Yeah, wasn't it? I mean, for me, I was glad it got to 15.
Yeah, no, I said the same thing. I said I'm glad
14 and a half. But
yeah, I'm glad they won it outright, and I'm glad it wasn't due to Hovland's, sleeping funny or I don't know what he did to his neck, but something. But that would have been a hard one to digest.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
But again, it wasn't. So first thing we'll look at is kind of course setup. I thought when I think of Bethpage Black, I think of the U.S. Open conditions, but I also think the length and the challenge of that golf course is them hitting very long irons into very tough greens. For whatever reason, we had complete control. The PGA of America and whatnot had complete control of setup. Why did they have so many daggone wedges in their hands? why was the golf course so daggone wet to give tour players lift, clean, and place basically all weekend, which they're going to destroy? And how are they ripping back wedges and irons out of the rough on the green? So who in the heck came up with that setup? Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I was quite surprised, having been there multiple times and seen the golf course live and in person. It was nothing like in '02 when they had the Open there. It was literally higher than ankle deep, and if you took 3 more steps off the fairway, it was knee deep in deep fescue. So that golf course can play extremely tough. They can make it really tight. They can make it hard, firm. Now, granted, there's weather that we can't control in there with rain and that kind of stuff, but there's certainly, I was very surprised at the height of the rough. I thought that gave a huge advantage to the European team, especially when you look at coming off of a year where we just played Oakmont at the U.S. Open, and if you took the top 12 players of the U.S., you took the top 12 players of Europe, we far outperformed them at highly difficult golf courses with tall rough, firm greens, and fast greens. So why we didn't use that to our advantage, barring knowing we had some probably weather, but other than that, at least the rough could have been taller. But I don't know. I wasn't in the room, so
I wasn't either. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, and me neither. So it's hard to say. It just seems the thing that caught my attention right away that first day was the putting. And so one of the things that I've understood, and I haven't really looked at the data on this, but my understanding is that the greens that the European tour players grow up with and play are much slower than we
Yeah.
have in the U.S. So if they're much slower, their ability for speed control you'd think would be so much better, which obviously is important for making putts. And it just seemed like that's what happened. I mean, their
Yeah.
putting was just so incredibly better than the U.S. team, and I remember, there's certain anecdotes and something I've witnessed where trying to go from the slow greens to the fast greens is certainly very difficult for a number of European players, and that's one of their main things they have to get used to when they come to the PGA Tour. And so they, especially when they have all of that memory from early days, that kind of internal memory where you don't even have a conscious understanding of what you're thinking about, you just know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it just seems like that would be a comfort level on these greens that the Europeans would have versus the U.S. would have to really make those adjustments. And, you even think about Russell Henley's putt on 18 where he came up short. And, it's like, hey, people are going to come up short. I don't fault him one bit. But, it's a downhill putt. And you never know how some of that kind of unconscious stuff finds its way into your movement pattern.
Yeah.
So that's how I looked at it. I'm just surprised that they would allow these greens to be so slow, even though it rained a little bit prior
I
to
agree.
it. That's what I don't understand.
Now, I still there's about 1,000 errors that it seemed that were all self-inflicted by the United States, and I couldn't get over that setup. I'm just sitting there going, this should be set up like a major, but a major that your players are going to do well in. And it to me it seemed it was like much more set up like the John Deere Classic. I mean, it was Europe the first 2 days. It was a birdie fest. Maybe it's good television. Maybe they wanted good television over everything else. But I was just sitting there going, you shouldn't be making 9, 10, 11 birdies in a 4-ball match. Like that is not that is not normal. So just sitting there going, I think somebody screwed it up. But part of me too thinks, and Mike, you can kind of jump on this. If you know what Bethpage is, you played it in the past, you played in the Open, really hard, really daunting. And then the course softens up. It becomes much more scoreable. What does that do to the player? And could it be the players were thinking more along the lines of this is Bethpage, and Europe came in there thinking this is cake? Like, here we go. Like, what is the psychology of that?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, a lot of times the negative pressure that people experience happens on the easiest scenarios where you think, oh, now I should be able to really go low here, or we should be able to play great. And if the course all of a sudden is that much easier, which it certainly was, then that could actually add to the pressure of winning, especially on their home course
Yeah.
or home advantage in the U.S. So I would, if I had to guess, I would think that could add to the pressure of the U.S. team. Whereas the European team comes in and goes, "Ooh,
Really?
yeah, this is nice. Thank
Really?
you. Let's go for it." Yeah, it's like,
This is
thank
how you're
you.
going to set it up? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
You remember in France when you had all the long hitters and we took the fairway from about 300 to about 330 and we narrowed it down to like 8 yards wide? Okay. Like it's like we're being too hospitable, but again, that just kind of thought it was a pretty weird thing. I guess the other big kind of craziness was the crowd. And when the crowd makes it about them and not about the player, they've gone over the line. But again, PGA of America, I'm dinging you on setup, whatever. Now I'm dinging you on crowd. One is you bring it to New York City. Have you been to New York City? They're brash. It's New York City. They're brash people. It's okay. They're just brash. So now we're going to put a bunch of brash people on a golf course for 14 hours and having drinks with little ducks in them. And you think that that's going to work out well for crowd control? It's like, come on, PGA. What are you do? What's up with the duck?
Yeah.
What the hell was that? Who sat there and said, let's have mixed drinks with ducks in them that squeak?
I have no idea what was that about. I mean, that's not your typical drink accessory, right? I mean, ducks
No.
on squeaky ducks. Yeah.
But Chris, what did you think of the crowd and how the crowd kind of took the show from the golfers? We lose you, Chris? How about you, Mike? What did you think how the crowd kind of took over the
I
storyline from
think
the
you said
golfers?
it so well. I think you said it so well that a number of the spectators made it about them.
Yeah,
And it does seem like in the media for the last year, that was kind of a storyline, that's what it's going to be. And there was no thought that that would be a bad thing. At least I didn't hear anything out there in the media that would be a bad thing. It almost set it up as the norm. So
yeah,
now it's your role now, spectators, to go do whatever you do and show and do what we expect you to do. And so some people took them up on that, and that's how I look at it. And along with the other factors that, with being in New York and so on. But it'd be interesting to be there. I would guess nearly everybody was fine, but you get enough of the minority, and it becomes a
always.
huge, huge issue, obviously.
The
And
5% rule.
like for me, go ahead, Chris. Did you have something to say about the crowd? Can you hear yet? Not quite. Okay, well, I'll just keep talking until Chris gets
That
back
works.
on. It's such a hard deal. I mean, in one sense, people like Paul Azinger called out Rory for double standard, getting on the spectators for doing that, and then him swearing at the spectators. Paul Azinger got on him for that, thought it was a double standard. And yet, a lot of people understand because he didn't start it, the old who started it deal. And so he just responded. So it's a tough deal. I don't prefer it. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of it. I have to say I wouldn't call myself a prude in any way, shape, or form, but I kind of would rather have it more like Augusta than Bethpage. If you're going to choose one or the other, I'd rather
Yeah,
have it like Augusta, where
yeah,
the patrons are just there to appreciate the golf
yeah.
and the scenery.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind the crowd being the crowd, and I don't mind them heckling and jeering and whatnot. But again, once the crowd made it about them and not about, again, once they kind of address the ball, golf is golf. Like, just shut up, let them hit it. And as soon as he hits them, you want to razz him all you want,
Right.
But I thought, like I said, I think the buildup of the media for the last 2 years saying how brash this New York crowd's, like, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Right.
and then they just kept making it more and more about the crowd. So you're like, okay, day 2, they're going to be even worse. Day 3,
Right.
they're going to be even worse because all you're telling them to do is, and again, I don't, PGA of America, you get to pick venues, there's 50 states, there's lots of venues, and you chose that place. Chris, what did you think?
Say that again.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I thought you said something to me.
No.
Yeah. What do you think about the crowd and how people acted and all that kind of stuff at Bethpage?
Yeah, I think that it got at times out of hand. I think just, you know, spectators could just be more respectful. I mean, the thought that they can influence the outcome of a shot. Unfortunately, that's a much bigger aspect today than it was even 5 or 10 years ago with betting, right? So, that I think that's the frustrating part, is that give the players a chance to showcase their talent and their skills. And there's always a Yahoo out there, and everybody needs to kind of voice their opinion, I guess, at times to feel like they have a say. But it could have been better. But I think in that regard, there is some gamesmanship, right? When we go and we play in Europe or we play here in the U.S., I'm all for quality gamesmanship that is within the boundaries of the protocol. I'm all for that. I mean, I think at times it may have gotten out of hand, especially when it gets a rise out of a player, and they respond to it. And that's exactly what the person that, started it wanted. But, unfortunately, we all are captivated by a response. And sometimes, as Doc knows this very well, the response is hard to manage in that environment and at that moment. So they could have been better. We all could be better. I will say on that task, in that topic, I was really, really happy to see Ted Scott do what he did in his response, because when it got heated between he and Eduardo, and he came out and did the right thing and said, hey, I got caught up in the moment. We're all human. I apologize. We're good friends. It was gone by the next tee and we moved on. And I thought that was very, very important I don't know if many saw that, but it was important. I thought it showed the character both for he and Eduardo and the spirit of the game. And I think that's what it really is about.
No,
Yeah,
I
I
really
did
like
see
Justin. Yeah, I like Justin Rose's comments right after the round too. He was like, it was a misunderstanding. I probably could have said it better, but I didn't in the time. And I apologize for that, but I'm not worried about it. Like it's over, it's done. It was just, whatever in the moment. So I appreciated the fact again that he addressed the caddy gate. I don't even know what okay. But so Mike, when you think back of it, you had Rory and you had what's his name, the Irishman. Why can't I think of his name?
Shane Lowry?
Shane Lowry.
Shane, yeah. So Shane wasn't, I wouldn't say playing bad, but wasn't playing great. And as soon as Rory started taking those daggers from everybody in the crowd, his game changed. So what is that what kind of mindset or attitude is that, where he actually fueled off of the fans and going after his fellow player?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it adds a new sense of determination to what you're doing, and realizing that, you go back to a couple of those, was it last? What, a Ryder Cup where Rory and one of the caddies of the other team got into it a little bit, and Shane Lowry was trying to protect Rory from going after him in the parking lot and that kind of thing. So I always got this impression that Shane Lowry is this protector. He's going to protect Rory. He's going to stop Rory from hurting himself, in a sense. And so, sometimes even when you're out there playing, there's this little boost that a person can get with a new motive, a new purpose. And that new purpose is beyond the self.
Yeah.
So I think I think that's what I would have guessed, that's what would have happened. Now his purpose is to help out when Rory needs it. So now it's about helping out Rory versus about his own game necessarily in itself. So I tend to think, and that's kind of the whole European theme is beyond themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Shane Lowry might have done in that particular kind of a situation. We can think back to a lot of people when they've won tournaments in the past, and you can, if you know the inside stories, you know this public, even the public story behind it, you see that a lot of times it's going beyond the self that allows them to get out of their own way and just allow themselves to play the way they usually can at their best. So that would be my guess.
Nice. Speaking of like team chemistry, Chris, what are your thoughts on why is Europe disproportionately better day one and day two than the United States? I sent Mike some numbers. It was something like 4-ball in the last how many years? It's like 170 points to like 140s or 120s, and then kind of the best ball. It's a little closer, but again, Europe has a pretty sizable lead. So why in the team side of it is Europe so much better than the United States?
Yeah, I think they grow up playing that way. They play a lot of match play. They play a lot of, foursomes versus 4-balls, even though we all play 4-balls. And then they, again, I look at data probably as much as most do, but they do a really good job of matching their pairings. I know Scheffler and JJ Spawn played in 4-ball together, but why those two did not play in a foursome, I don't know. I just was, and that you put 3 of the 4 2-player for the U.S. out Friday and Saturday in foursomes. There's just pairings that not only mathematically are better, but from a chemistry, a player standpoint, a motivation standpoint, which I think is really important. The bottom line is Europe just does a really good job of pairing their players together for that particular style of play. That's the bottom line. And I don't think the U.S. has figured it out. And they got to work on it. We got to work on it. There's no doubt about it.
Definitely. What do you think, Mike? What do you think the big separator is in Europe versus America in the first 2 days?
I think the bond goes deep in Europe, and I don't think the U.S. can get there. I don't think they can get there. I think they like each other. I think they all enjoy each other probably for the most part. I think they probably have a really pretty darn good bond. I think they have team unity. All the things that they want to be like Europe with, they'll never be like Europe.
I agree.
I don't think they ever will. And so I think they're going down the wrong road here, but I'm reconnecting. Can you actually hear me at this point?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So, my thought is they're never going to be able to get to the depth. I mean, you see Tommy Fleetwood putting his head on Rory's shoulder. But you see this intimacy between them, and not just high fives and hugs. It's the kind of thing you don't see athletes do. You see people hitting each other on the bottom, high fives, all these things, but you don't see somebody like that level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that shows a deep level of bonding that I just don't think the U.S. is going to be able to compete with.
No, I agree. And I think a lot of it too, the more I've thought about this is, the European players come over to the States to kind of make their living. And I think there's a bonding and a tightness to that as well. Like as they come over, they've grown up, play junior golf. They come over, they hang out together, they do things together. So they're continuously creating a bond, where the United States, when we come together, it is just 12 assassins. And, and then the 12 assassins do really well at assassin stuff. But as soon as you put them in alternate shot and that, it's, so yeah, I think the United States needs to have a real look inward on what don't try to be Europe-lite. Like
Exactly.
Europe has got Europe, and Europe is
Exactly.
doing Europe things. Let Europe do Europe things. What can you do with your assassins to disrupt Europe? And
Yep.
I don't think since maybe Azinger, but that was kind of a weird year. But other than that, I don't think the United States, like, you're going to be down going in, but can you limit that? So what do you think some things that they might the U.S. could do to change that? Like what would be
Well,
some
yeah, you brought up Paul
attitudinal
Azinger
changes?
in that year, and they did they used the pod system, and they used a person who had used this test called the Myers-Briggs, which I'll just say it
I know
has
you don't like
horrible
the test.
I don't like the test, horrible reliability, horrible validity, but it doesn't matter because Paul Azinger, to
Believed
me,
in it.
was the key.
Yep.
He is so good with people,
Yeah.
I think, that he was able to talk to people and say just the right thing at the right time because he just knew the people. And I think
Yeah.
the pod system was a part of it, and it allowed for the belief in this system. But I don't think that was necessarily what made them win.
Of course not. But it's
It was
great folklore.
Paul Azinger was just he just knew what to say to these people at the right time, and he got it. But it wasn't just him, but yeah, that's what I kind of think. So, are we already at the point where we're going to talk about what we wanted to have them change in the future?
Yeah,
Is
well,
that where we're at yet, or
not
okay?
yet, but we'll get
Not
there.
quite. Let's wait. I'll
Not
wait with that.
yeah. But I think it's, again, I think the United States is funny this way. Like, we're used to playing stroke play or match play. Like, that's what we do. I know in Europe they take golf very serious. Every time that they tee it up, it's a very serious event. Where in the U.S. it's much more laid back until you're into a tournament situation. So all those components are, like I said, are stacked, in Europe's favor. So I think figuring out a way to combat that, again, is not being Europe-lite. Is not trying to play ping pong and thinking we're playing ping pong together. We're a community. We see the we more than me. That's not the way
Yeah.
this works. So I'm also interested.
Right.
What do you think about team captains? Like, here's where golf drives me crazy. The only time you really ever play team golf in the States is in college, maybe high school. Less nowadays, but basically college is about the only time you play a team event. Where in Europe they play a lot of club versus club as they're growing up. In the States there's not a ton of that going on. So, I find it very funny that we put golf coaches that know nothing about team dynamics, and just because they're a good golfer, they are the captain. What the hell? Who came up with that? Your job as a captain is to manage 12 people, and you have to have coaching skills to manage them. And instead, I love Keegan. He said all the right things and he took all the blame and all that. But you're taking a guy that's a golfer who's one of America's assassins, don't put him on the team, and then expect him to be able to go to motivate, manage 12 assassins to go play this event. Like, again, I'm sitting there and going, what the hell are we doing? Like, what is this? Like, it baffles me. Absolutely baffles me. As a coach who has taught teams, I coached college golf for 20 years. We sometimes had the less talented team, but they would play much better as a unit, and we would
Yeah.
succeed opposed to having the better players on the field. So, again, it's just, to me, I think there's a lot of things the United States needs to look at in their pairings and this kind of set up, and really come to a real consensus on how to move forward. Any thoughts on that, Chris? We lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value to that conversation. I'm always intrigued. You think about, well, what we're doing doesn't work. Granted, they've certainly found something in past captaincies. Luke Donald, I'll be surprised if he doesn't do another one. But is there anything that says, again, I'd have to look into this, but if you want a coach, if you want somebody that can actually do some things that may play golf, whether it's somebody outside of the game of golf, basketball, NFL, hockey, Olympic coach, right? A team coach. I think that would be an interesting conversation, or at least bring those people into the circle to help, whether that's, pairings or I don't know. I think there's something worth exploring. And I think that they should really sit down and take an in-depth look at what Europe does and study past pairings, study different things, because we certainly have the quality of player. It's just that we're not utilizing them to our best interest in certain formats.
Yeah. So think of some of the best pressure moments over the event. Cam making that putt when Justin Rose looked dead, had a 15-minute ruling where people were taking a nap. Justin comes firing back, ties it up, misses the putt, which it was kind of amazing. Justin Rose actually misread it, which is, those 4 or 5 holes coming in, he wasn't misreading anything. And then Cam just kind of, man, what a dog. So think of some of those pressure moments and kind of what your thoughts are on that, Mike.
Well, I mean, it's just the old idea that if your back's against the wall and all you got is to be able to make it, or else, you lose or something. That could be a pretty darn freeing situation, really. They might be really nervous. At the same time, there's probably no fear of missing as much as you might typically have. So I just think in a situation like that, listen, I have been in that situation, believe me or not. I've been there. I played in some competition where I had to make an 8-foot putt. I had to make a 30-foot putt. I know what the feel, and I made them, but I knew what the feeling was like, and I wasn't worried. I wasn't anxious. I was just so focused because I knew this is the only consequence that can happen, or it's over.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel free, but it's super focused. And I've done that in baseball too, where you're last one up, there's runners on base, you're in 9th inning, and you've got to be able to get a hit in order to get the runs in and to keep the game going or whatever. And it's the same thing. It provides this sense of focus that oftentimes you don't get. And I think it's just that it allows you to have that single goal. And you've heard me talk about the single goal before, but I think that allows you to have the single goal. And I think that's why they're more likely to make those putts in that situation. And it's a weird scenario, and I can really feel it. I've obviously never been at a level like that, but it's all relative. And I would think they would feel a very similar way, and they would have the same kind of a mentality where you're just so into it that there is nothing that's distracting you. And it's like, you could call it a zone. And the other thing about that, by the way, is that oftentimes when people are in the zone, for at least that, even for a 1 putt, you're aware of what you're doing. You're aware of what you're doing at that time. So I would be curious about that with Cam Young or Justin Thomas or even Shane Lowry when he made that putt, to see if they had that sense of almost observing themselves as they were putting. Because that is a very common experience when people are fully into it. It's kind of strange, I think, for people to think about it that way, but that's very common. It's not like you're above yourself or anything, but it's almost like you're observing yourself in the moment. And I would think there may be a little bit of that. It's a very special state, and it only comes when you have to do this. It has to happen. It can happen other times, but it definitely is a really great facilitator of that when you have to make it. I think about Tiger Woods and how many times he had to make a putt, and he did. I would guess he's in a similar state like that.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I think that Europe, when they have an approach shot or a shot at the green, they certainly had a tighter proximity to the hole, and I think part of that is they're not. They know their partner has got them right, so even if they short side themselves, they're still going to get it up and down, right? So I think they're more free, as you said, and then making that putt is, their desire to make the putt for them, for the team, for their partner, is a major driver for their success.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just to go back, I'll tell a quick story. When I mentioned that 8 and 30 footer, my son and I were playing in a state adult junior tournament. All right. So, and he's like, what was he, 10 or 11 or something, but we still want to win. And it's a state championship type thing. So I had missed about every putt all day. And because I had left my putter out, somebody took it and I didn't have my putter. So I used my daughter's. So I was missing all day. So on the 18th hole, I had to make an 8-footer. And I told my son, I said, just aim me. Because I don't know where I'm aimed. Just aim me. And I just totally had faith. And I just let him make sure my putter was just where it did. Made the 8-footer, first putt I made all day. Then on the 30-footer, I had him do the same thing. Just aim the putter for me. I have no idea where I'm aiming.
You sound
And it
like
happens to go in the hole. So that helped.
Yeah.
That was a part of that story.
Yeah, along the lines of, the success of the players and the pairings, after round one of the thoughts I had, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, the conversations in the team room, the dynamics of the team room atmosphere. How big of a role, does that play for overall success, but also kind of the rejuvenation or the continuation of the momentum? Because momentum in a match play event like this does play a massive role.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think so much of we talk about a motivational pep talks or whatever you want to call them, but I do think it's important to remind people of what the theme or the purpose or the meaning of it all is for them. Because it's easy to get distracted by other things that matter. So I think that's where those conversations really help a lot. They remind them what's important and what they're all about. And so they can go back to the next morning and have that same motivational set. I think that's really what it's about. And I would guess that the European team does it amazingly well. They don't get sidetracked by anything else. And there's probably a lot of the continued kind of camaraderie where they just really do have a focus on the other. And so that takes away that self-consciousness. I think that self-consciousness stuff is oftentimes what gets people in situations like this. It'd be easy too. I mean, you got millions of people, watching, and you got all these people out there. Well, on the other hand, it's easier, I think, than a lot of people think to, not in that particular situation with Bethpage, but a lot of times when you have a normal tournament, it's easier than a lot of people think to just be inside the ropes and do what you do without even really thinking about the crowd. I think it's a lot easier, actually, than people think. And so I think that the motivational set allows them to maintain that level of focus, and be less self-conscious. And because I really do believe self-consciousness is the thing that often will get in our way. It certainly would absolutely destroy the possibility of being in any kind of a zone or flow. And so I think that's a big part of what the European bond with their players allows them to do, to be so less self-conscious.
Nice.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on, do you think Donald's going to be the captain at Ardmore?
Gosh, I am 50-50. I don't know. How about you, Brian? I just don't know.
I would
3 times.
Yeah.
Just keep on going, see how many can win.
Be unprecedented.
He's got the hot
sure.
hand.
Yeah.
And he must, and again, he might, he could be kind of that zinger, the guy that just able to pierce the room. And again, I think, the more I think about it, you think
within
about
that Ryder Cup realm, we look at all of the analytics. We look at, as Keegan talked about, the data. And of course, that's such a big piece of golf today when you're talking about pairings and players. As I look back at the pairings that were Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and I look back and kind of dive into some of the statistics, there's some meat there that would certainly indicate that was a good plan. I think at some point there still has to be execution for players, and from an execution standpoint, Mike, what would you say that how does Europe step up in these situations and they're able to do that? Like what is it that's different even if it's from like a preparation standpoint, because I think that certainly has something to do with it. But the mindset, the mentality, I don't know. I'm curious to hear the inner workings of motivation from that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's good. I would go back to what I was saying earlier. I would say, anytime you have a purpose that goes beyond the self. Now that could be. It doesn't have to be philosophical, but I think it is a bit philosophical with the Europeans, going back to all the players that have come before them, and all the players that will come in the future who will look up to them. All of these different things, I think, is a part of it. But even just hitting a shot and the purpose of this shot has a deeper meaning to it. It's not just let's get close to the pin, even though there's nothing wrong with that, and that people can play amazingly well during that situation, right? They can, but I don't think that's necessary. I just think that when I think about what hurts people's mental game, it's always something that's interfering with the goal that has some real solidity to it. And so there's other goals that are going to get in the way, other things that matter that are going to get in the way. And just the slightest bit of that takes a person away. Like, I was even just talking to a softball player last night. It's the same thing. It's like, what do you do when you're in the hole? What are you thinking about? What about when you're on the deck? What about when you're on the plate? All the same things. She must have mentioned 8 or 9 goals while she was in the hole, 7 or 8 on deck, and in the plate, she probably still had 6. And then she's supposed to be able to see the ball and react to it. So you just imagine you have even just 2 in the Ryder Cup situation. That's enough to take you off the game just slightly. So instead of hitting it just where you want to on the groove, you're just slightly off, and now you're 35 feet instead of 10 feet or 15 feet or so. That's really how I look at it, Chris. It's about being able to be so locked into the particular goal that matters at the moment. And if that goal has some depth to it, with some motive, some purpose, that doesn't have to do with what it means for you, that's what I would call freedom. I would call it integrity as well, because integrity is being undivided. And I think Europeans are more undivided in the way that they play because of their bond, because of what it means to them to play for everybody else. And it's not the kind of playing for everybody else that we talked about in the past, like playing for your parent and now you're worried about not living up to their expectations. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I think there's more of that on the U.S. team.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Chris, you can't hear me? Okay, so Chris can't hear me at all.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All right. So that's my thought, Chris. And I think the challenge is always to help figure out, how do you help somebody prepare so that they have a purpose that can be stronger than all of the other things that could matter. And I think that's what allows the brain to send the message that much more pure down to the body.
Nice.
No, I like that. So I know we're having some technical issues, mainly my issue. Chris can't hear me, but Mike can hear me, and Mike will have to relay to Chris. I don't know. But let's hit the last session here real quick, and let's talk about kind of future fixes. If the PGA of America came to Chris and Mike Grevlos and said, "Hey, this is what would you do to make the cup better?" What suggestions would you give them, Mike? And then you pass it off to Chris.
And then I'll pass it off. Maybe I'll pass it off to Chris now. Chris, the question is, what would you do to make the cup better for the U.S. in the future?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's deep. That's hard to.
Hey, I'll let you think about it. I'll come back to you in a second. I've got a thought on this one, and Brian, so you can hear me then.
Yeah.
Here's my thought. It's what we were talking about earlier. It's no longer trying to be Europe. It's trying not to create a bond that matches Europe's. I don't think it'll ever happen. Again, it's not that they don't like each other and won't experience a unity and for the team. That's all fine. But it's not deep enough to matter that much in my mind. I would rather that they abandon that goal because they're going to get along. They're going to have a shared goal. It's going to be fine. And what I would say is everybody needs to get to know themselves better. You help them get to know themselves, raise their own awareness about each individual. Yeah, I know this is crazy. It's a different paradigm here for the Ryder Cup because everybody has to be playing for the team and for the country. But that's going to be there. But let's focus on each individual and helping them learn about how do they play best in a situation like this? What do you need to be able to do? And then you start working on pairings to figure out what's going to work best with the pairings. But they got to get to know themselves better first. And a lot of these guys have had experiences in Ryder Cups, so they'll have some of that to draw from. But you better give them the opportunity. And I think it's more about that. I think that's what's going to allow them to raise their performance in the situation. I also don't think they need to have any kind of fight mentality. They don't need a fight mentality like the whole team's going to go kick the other's butt or whatever. I don't think that's necessary for this team. Each individual's so good. They're so used to playing individual golf. They're used to playing, as you were mentioned, they didn't play in club golf and all these things as much. They're used to that. Let's have you play for you based on how you play your best, and then figure out which two players are going to be able to play together the best. And you can still use data and all that, but I think the individual awareness has to rise first. And I think that's very different than what you'd see in the European team because I don't think they need that route. They have the bond already. So that's my thought. I know it's a different paradigm that people talk about, that you just need more and more team unity. I don't think that's it. I think they all would say, hey, we have a unified team. They just don't know themselves well enough in that particular kind of a context.
It makes perfect sense. Chris, Mike?
Yeah, okay. Chris, have you thought about something that you want to do to help make this U.S. Ryder Cup performance better in the future?
Yeah, I think what you said was eye-opening. I think that was very insightful for me because that was well beyond what I was thinking. Where I was going to go is I don't think changing how many captains picks or the format or if you play foursomes first or four ball first. I just don't think the end game is going to be that. I think you have really brought some light to an area where the individuals can become better, which then those individuals make up the team, which gets stronger. I think if you went surface level, yes, course setup and pairings could be much better. However, I think that pairing aspect only comes from what you just described. And I think that it's a performance game. It's human, it's behavior, it's execution, it's skill, and going within to the internal and to the player individually. I think that's a great piece of insight.
Thank you.
I have a question for both of y'all. How much do you think the Live Tour depleted America more so than Europe and the DP Tour? Kind of Live and DP Tour had kind of a thing going. How much do you think the Live Tour might have prevented maybe one or two past players, maybe a little more, I don't know, different players into the team than, how depth wise? What do you think, Mike? The Live Tour hurt the U.S. chances a little bit?
Wow. Never thought about that before, actually. Well, it is interesting, isn't it? There is some cooperation happening on the DP World Tour and the Live Tour. And so having John Rahm, Tyrrell Hatton on that team,
yeah, because if you think
probably didn't have any.
you think of
create
Patrick
a split.
Reed, top 10 on the Live Tour, Taylor Gooch, those are some cats that, and then of course you would have a DJ or now DJ doesn't care about golf much anymore, but even a Koepka Like the Live Tour, it has watered down the PGA product, and I think kind of a little bit of I would say the Ryder Cup team seemed a little more watered down than maybe in the past.
That is really interesting. I mean, and Brooks Koepka's been playing more DP World Tour events lately, playing in Dunhill as well. And interesting idea. I really hadn't thought about it, but I could see where that's. I don't know exactly how it would.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't have some of the players that could have been on the team who played with other players in the past, all that kind of a thing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Chris, I'll transfer that question. Chris, what do you think of the possibility of the split between the PGA Tour and the Live Tour may have impacted the U.S. Ryder Cup team, whereas the DP World Tour and the Live Tour, they seem to be cooperating more, where you've got Live Tour players playing in events more at DP World Tour, and maybe there's not such a split there. So what are any thoughts on the Live Tour issue and how that might have affected the U.S. team?
Yeah, I don't think that plays a big role because there's plenty of U.S. players that are playing DP World Tour to maintain, they got to play a certain amount of events. So just from a surface view, I don't think that probably has a lot of view on it. I'm curious to hear what Brian said there about.
Yeah. Well, Brian asked the question because he did wonder about it. It is interesting because Bryson seemed to get along. I mean, I don't know, Scotty Scheffler's talking him up, and I don't know. I didn't hear any kind of thing where Bryson was creating any kind of an issue. It seemed like he was a good team member, and people really liked having him on the team. So I guess in that sense, there is a player from Live on there. I don't.
And he doesn't. Well, a lot of he plays Live, but there are other U.S. players that are playing DP World events too. Obviously, some of them were not in the Ryder Cup, but if we just kind of look at Bryson wants to win for the U.S. I can go to bat on that one. I'm pretty sure he's fired up about winning for the U.S. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Regardless of what tour he played on.
Yep. True. Very true.
So, we'll kind of wrap this one up with our technical issues, but I would say, I think let's throw this one out too. Team selection. Is the point system the best way to go? So basically you start earning points over the next 2 years to earn your way into the next Ryder Cup. Is that the best way to pick a team completely, other than a couple captain's choices? Should there be less earned spots and more captain choices? Less captain choices, more earned spots? Should we change how that's done? Are majors more important than total points and things like that? What do you think about selecting the team, Mike? And again, kind of going players knowing players, having two players that don't bond and having them compete together is a scenario to fail. So I'm a little worried with the kind of the setup of the system currently, that you earn points and you're kind of forced into situations where the team won't work well. So what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll wrap this puppy up and send that over to Chris too.
I'll send that to Chris. Chris, be thinking about this. What do you think about team selection processes? Should it be a 2-year process of point accumulation? Should there be more captain choices? Those kinds of things. What are your thoughts on that? My thoughts are would have to be coming to me as I'm speaking now. So I would just say two things that come to mind right away. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of confidence in my opinions at this point. I'd have to think through the implications of them all a lot more. But I would say that it does seem like on the DP World Tour, it's more difficult to get on that team based on points if you're not on the PGA Tour. So that's one interesting thing. It seems like the PGA Tour is the way to get points for the DP World Tour, or the European team, for the European team. I think it's easier there. So that's one thing. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's not. I haven't really thought that much about it. But it is something to think about. The other thing with the 2 years, gosh, that's a long time, isn't it? I mean, 22 to 24 months, you had your best success, and then you didn't do much ever then, you might have accumulated a ton of points. That doesn't seem like that would be a really great way to pick and have a player on your team who had peaked such a long time ago. So that does seem like to be an issue at first thought. That 2 years, wow. In the last year, yeah, I could see that. But even in the last year,
Even the last
I don't
6 months.
know. Even the last 6 months, that's what people can just go
Look at
downhill. So
Morikawa. At the beginning of the year, he was on fire.
he was on fire. So maybe there's more captain's choices. Yeah, maybe that's what would lead to more captain choice. But on the other hand, then of course there's a downside of that possibility of bias selections and things like that. So yeah,
You mean like Morikawa getting back on the team? No, I'm kidding.
yeah, that's a tough one. I know there's been criticism thrown out to the U.S. team and where there's certain players that just keep getting on there, but it's hard. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, Chris, how about you?
Well, I'll start with I think currently 6 picks for captains is too many. I'll start there.
Okay.
I think it should be merit-based and play-based. In
Okay.
regards to the 2-year period, I think the 2-year period's fine. I would say that it needs to be weighted with more points when you get within the last year so that the players that are playing better quality golf closer to the Ryder Cup can work their way into a pick or points qualification. And maybe that's, 12-month window and then a 6-month window, or obviously there's points for majors and whatnot in there. But I think the quality of play as it gets closer should be rewarded. I think 4 picks would probably be good for a captain, maybe 3 or 2. Again, I think that fluctuates just based on who you see qualify based on points. So that's just.
You've come up with kind of a balanced approach here, which that appeals to me, where you weigh it closer to the time in which the Ryder Cup occurs, but you allow it to accumulate over time as well. But you don't like the idea of six picks. Why is it that you don't like that many picks?
I think there's some picks in there that could be influenced by pairings, potential pairings from history. We saw some.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there goes Chris.
Well,
All right.
I
So
disagree
that's
180
interesting.
degrees with Chris. I was going to kill him on this.
Okay, so what are your thoughts?
Again, if you want to create the best team, you have to create the best flexibility to pick the right team. So we're going to play Bethpage back. We're going to set it up this way. We need players that can play together and perform on this course. And that might not be the best 8, 10 point players. Like, think of, again, I'll think of college golf. College golf, you got 12 players on your team. Now, granted, it's not this caliber, but the first 3 to 5, you don't worry about. Like Scotty, Bryson's Bryson. They're going to show up. They're going to do their thing. You don't have to worry about them. Like the elites are the elites. Don't worry about them. The role players are the ones I think. Now, granted, they're the 1%ers of the 1%ers. Like, don't get me wrong. But there are roles that you are going to play, and I think Europe does this really well. We have our thoroughbreds, and we have our role players. And our role players are there to lift the other players. However, whatever that is, I think it's the United States. Again, we say, all right, here's our 12 best or 8 best, and we pick. It doesn't mean that's your best team. And I think Europe just does. Like, their selections were disproportionately better than ours. Like, whether it's our bench wasn't deep enough or maybe it was. Maybe that. And again, Europe's team was better on paper than the U.S. And so to me, I don't know. I don't think the point system, the way, playing collegiately, watching other coaches, there's a lot of coaches that did qualifiers. We're going to qualify for the event. Well, okay, so you're 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 3. You're taking 5, so there's 2 spots open. You play them all, and they're all within 2 shots of each other. They're the same kid. And for you just to say, well, I'm going to take you and you because you shot 1 shot better than this person over 2 days or 3 days or 4 days, without understanding what is that team makeup. Are they making the team better when we travel? Or are they a headache? Or when we go to the event, is the golf course set up? If they're a short hitter and it's a long hitter's course, why did I pick the short hitter? Because I created this rule that says I have to take who qualifies. No, you take the best effing team that you can take to an event to allow them to succeed. And I think the PGA, I love you guys, but they're so daggone steeped in history, and this is the way it's always done, and this is the way we're going to do it again. No, I think we've got to blow this up and say, we've got to create more flexibility. The last 6 months, like if you want to run points from now to then, fine. But the last 6 months, it really matters. I really say the last 3 months leading into an event is the most important because people are playing. And again, if you're not shooting well, now granted the PGA Tour, why do they run the schedule the way they run the schedule? I don't know, because it ends in September. But if you're not in the in the PGA Championship, like, you shouldn't be on the team. Like, I'm just sitting here going, it's just frustrating to me. Again, we're trying to be a Swiss Army knife instead of taking 4 golfers that are designed for the team and can destroy this golf course. Forget Europe. Who cares about Europe? Can they go to this golf course? Can they succeed? And can they succeed with the team that we have? There's your picks. And now I know there's political, there always is.
Yeah.
That's never going to change. But part of me is just sitting there going, whatever the system's working, it's not working. The last 20 years has been terrible for the United States overall. Other than a huge comeback, in the 90s and an off breed here or there, they've been dominated. So the question is what are people willing to do differently? And I know the PGA, and they're not going to change anything because that's what they do. That's who they are.
That's an interesting take that you have. There's no doubt. I'm trying to figure out how to balance that with Chris's merit-based piece. And yeah, see, I need a lot more thought on this for sure before I come to an opinion.
But Scotty Scheffler's going to be there.
Yeah, he's going to be there.
The top 5, the top, if you took the top 15, 20 on the PGA Tour, not all of them are going to be American. So let's say 8 of them are American. They're probably going to be good. They're going to be on the team in some fashion. But again, to me, that second component of why am I bringing these people?
I think a way to, so just an idea. I don't know. Yeah. An idea that I think allows for all of that to be the case would be if you're going to do captain's picks and you're going to have certainly more weight those last 3 months, but your captain picks will need to come from people in the top at least 30 on the Ryder Cup list or something like that. If you did something like that. Yeah, right. So that would be fair, where you'd have this combination of, hey, you've got a lot of players to choose from here. You don't have to go 11, 12, 13, 14, or whatever. You've got all these other players, 20 other players or whatever, that you'd be able to choose from that have had a really good year or 2 years, I guess, but maybe the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And so now you can choose them. So somehow or another you could find a balance there. I'm sure you could. There is no rigid rule that you have to follow. That's what your point is.
Yeah.
Why do we have to keep it the same?
Yeah. And I'm not hating on Henley. I'm not hating on Henley. Good dude. Right. Had a great season. But did that golf course set up for him?
Right.
It didn't. He was a short hitter. He's going to hit fairways. That didn't benefit. These guys are literally hitting it 40 yards past him in the rough and still zipping the ball back. Like they're controlling spin and everything out of the rough. Like now he would have been perfect if the rough was a foot deep. Like he would have been tearing them up. But again, to me, the hindsight, the ability to think. I love data. I'm a huge data guy. I used to be part of a data company. Like data is important, but I think we get a little crazy with data and we forget the human element. Like sometimes there's some people just are a dog, man. They just don't want to lose. Like they have that psychological component, like a dog. And sometimes you got to have a dog. And maybe the dog's not playing great, but when you put the dog in that situation, he's going to bite. Like he's not going to fold. He's not going to do. And again, I think a lot of times, probably my favorite story ever. And again, collegiately, it's completely different than the Ryder Cup. Don't get me wrong. We had a senior that had variability in her golf game. She could shoot 68 and she would shoot 88, all within the same tournament, within a 3-day window. Like you just didn't know, right? But what she did is we had a freshman on our team that when this senior was in the lineup, was kind of like a mother, made sure she got to everything on time, made sure she packed right, did all the things, and allowed the freshman to flat out play. So our team was disproportionately better when we had a player that had this huge variance, but we had other players at home that were much better and would have provided us a very leveled scoring piece. But our team was disproportionately better because of her variance and the fact that she made another player elevate, that elevated the team. So, and then the funny part is she qualified terrible, Mike, because she put so much pressure on qualifying that she couldn't break 90 in qualifying. But literally she'd shoot a 68 in the tournament for one day and then shoot an 88. Right. But that's who she was. So kind of what we told her in the spring season, which is the most important season in college golf, is you're on the team. Don't worry about qualifying. We're not even going to qualify. You're on. Your job is to be variance, but to keep our freshmen rolling. And we played the entire spring season with her, finished top 20 in the country. And she was a player that no other college team would have played her. But that made our team better.
Right.
So
we only need 4 scores.
We need 4 scores.
One of them, the freshman.
And the freshman's going to give it to us with her. And then on a crazy day, she's going to shoot a low number. We're going to take her score. But the other two, we don't care.
Yeah, the other one.
Because the other girls are so good, we don't care. That's the mentality I don't think we have. I think Europe has that. I think Europe really thinks through and there's all that component. But I think in the U.S., we just do a really bad job. And again, the U.S. is a merit-based system. You've earned it. That's who we are. But we're in a team event. It's a little bit different. So I'm just trying to think a little bit differently. And I would say the PGA of America should take the best college coaches in the country on the men's side and have them be part of this because they live this every day of their lives. They're figuring out how to motivate 7 different player types, different golf swings, different attitudes, and they're trying to figure out how to merge that into a cohesive team to move it forward.
Well, that's interesting. Have you ever heard that idea out there before?
I haven't.
College coaches coming in,
I'm
being part of the
really good college coaches. Now again, keep your captain and all that, but I'm just sitting there going,
just coming in as consultants in a sense, which they already have anyway.
Yeah, and just say here's
consultants.
Yeah, here's but I think there's a lot of bone on that. We're gonna have to talk about how to solve this really. We're gonna solve the world problems. There you go.
Yes. Let's do it.
So let's wrap this up.
I'm sure
Mike.
we got some.
That's right. Let's wrap this up.
We got
Mike.
some other ideas that we won't. We haven't shared yet here on here. So we can keep going.
That's right. But Mike, let's wrap this puppy up. What are your kind of closing thoughts? And sorry, Chris, I don't know. We've had all kind of technical.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad. Yeah, I just think that you do have to look at the individuals of the team, and you've got to understand their own patterns and tendencies, and they need to understand their own. They need to. And they need to understand it in a very specific context, which is a situation like the Ryder Cup, of course, because that's where it's going to be. Yeah. And then I think that's where it starts, and then you'll figure out who's going to play with each other from there.
Yeah.
I just think the other thing is going into it without that aggressive fighting attitude. You don't need it.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do they have that attitude going into a regular tournament? now all of a sudden, now you have to change and become. All of a sudden, you're trying to be a different person now, and a different whole mentality going into and playing golf. You think about Scotty Scheffler #1, Tiger Woods #1. Tiger didn't win a bunch of these team the
Not at
events,
all.
the pairings, foursomes, four balls, and neither does Scotty. And what is that? I mean, is it a coincidence? I don't think so.
No.
It's
Oh,
not that they didn't play well. It's just it's a whole different deal, and all of a sudden you're supposed to just become a different person.
no, I agree
That's
with
not
you
how you
there.
do it.
And I'll give you another funny story. We had again, people being different at a venue, right? I might have told this story in the past. I don't remember. We had a freshman that came in. She won the pub links the last year that they had the USGA pub links for the public courses. Really good player, but didn't play very well her first year with us. And kind of halfway through the spring season, we're just like, she plays really well, and then she kind of falls apart on the back nine. Usually kind of in the second and third day, she like loses energy. So one morning we're literally sitting there at breakfast, and the girls, some of them are drinking coffee, some don't, because some girls drink coffee and some don't. And one of the girls looked at her and goes, "Why aren't you having coffee this morning? We get coffee every morning when we go to, back in Charlottesville, we always meet for coffee." And I looked at her. I go, "You drink coffee every day?" And she goes, "Yeah." I go, "Why are you not drinking coffee at this event?" And she goes, "I'm trying to be better for the team." And I was like, your body is used to pulling in so much caffeine throughout the day, and you're using that. I was like, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Do you have them during the day?" And she goes, "Yes." I go, "How often do you drink coffee?" She goes, "Probably 3 to 4 cups throughout the day." And I go, "You come
Yeah,
to a tournament and you just quit?" And she's like,
yeah,
"Yeah." I was like, "Do you
yeah,
think that's an issue?" And she goes, "Well, what do we do?" So at the turn, we'd give her a little Coke, like a little 6-ounce Coke,
yeah.
so she'd get caffeine. And
There
because
you go.
again, in her coffee, she put tons of sugar, tons of cream.
Yeah,
So we're like, a Coke's the perfect supplement. And we found that her performance was better because she didn't have that lull in energy, and her body
right.
wasn't just so. I mean,
But she thought she had to do that in order to be a team player.
yes, and she didn't. She just needed to be her best her. Like,
Right,
right? So
exactly.
so kind of what you said, they don't have to change. And I know
No,
America and the cup and all that, and I think that's where Europe's brilliant, is they don't change. They're communal.
right.
Europe's more
Yeah,
communal than we are. We're more
right.
independent, more, that's
Yeah,
kind of what
yeah,
they are.
true.
So Europe falls in on themselves because that's who they are as a culture, and we're
Yeah,
not. So again, you know how you fight for the US? You do your job.
right. Just do your job.
You do your
You be
job, and you
you be you.
you be you. You be an assassin. Maybe
Exactly.
this battle calls for 2 assassins to take out, one target. That's fine. Let's figure
Yeah,
out how to put 2 assassins together to end for an
yeah,
end goal. But
yep,
I think yeah, I think America's been doing it wrong, and it frustrates me because now
yeah,
I do think Europe is more talented. Don't get me wrong. I think from top to bottom, Europe had a much better team. Fleetwood's playing his brains out. Justin Rose is his dog. You put him in this situation. Justin had a great year. People forget he's
yeah.
won. He almost won the Masters.
That's right.
Like he had a great season. So I think,
Yep.
and then Rom is, he loves this stuff.
Oh
Hatton,
yeah.
you don't ever think about Hatton until the Ryder Cup. So
Right. I mean, yeah. I forget isn't he like top 10 in
yeah,
world ranking or
no, he's
something? I mean,
awesome. But you forget
something
about
like
him.
that.
But he shows
How's
up
he
in the
do it?
Ryder Cup, and he's a dog. So
Yeah.
part
Right.
of me just sits there as I hope there's actually some real reflection going on inside of the U.S. side and saying,
Yeah.
all right, what we're doing is not working. Let's
Yeah.
not overreact, and let's not go nuts. But we've really
Right.
got to have a inside look. Are we too much on data? Are we data crazy? I don't think with Keegan and all them by the pairings, I don't think the data crazy was the piece this one. But maybe the
Yeah.
course setup was data driven. Well, it
Yeah.
shows XYZ, but did they take into the fact that when Europe comes together, that X and Y is now a Z, and that Z is playing the golf course completely different than X and Y. So
Yeah.
again, I think
Right.
those components of it is
Yeah.
I mean, it's the one thing I've learned, like, you know, we thought we could bet the PGA Tour. There's so many variables, so many factors. To predict score is almost impossible. So again, now you're elevating that by pressures and team, and it just exponentially grows how hard it is to predict. But I really agree with you. I think it's, you know, it's we over me. We can't be Europe, but we do need to figure out, why am I fighting with you towards this goal? And if we can figure out each other, what we are and what each other are, that's as much camaraderie as we need. You know,
That's all you get. Yeah, that's
all we
all.
need.
You don't need any more.
No, I agree. I think
You don't need to you don't need to have the head on the shoulder. But Europe is that genuinely.
they are.
And so they're going to be that way, and that's wonderful. It's cool to see. But you just don't see that.
But I have
and if
no
it happens
problem
in
with
the U.S. someday, it will be a byproduct because of them being able to be themselves.
I agree. And like I said,
That's
Cam
how
Young
that would ever
making
happen.
that putt and just being like, I refuse to lose this. Like, I refuse. Like, you know,
Yeah.
that's the American. To me, that's the American spirit. I'm standing
Right.
here on 18 by myself, and I'm gonna effing do this.
Yeah.
It's kind of the American mantra, and where the European mantra is like, we are gonna do this. And you know, so to me, it's just finding the right balance and finding what makes the U.S. good, and not try to be again, anytime you try to be someone else, you know you're not going to be very good at it.
No, that's not how you do it.
All right, Mike, let's shut this puppy down. And
all right.
Good luck to the Ryder Cup captain next time, whoever that would be. And Tom Watson got blown up for his performance, and then I guess Keegan's going to be blown up. So again, Paul Azinger, his mystique just grows more and more.
Yeah, it does.
All right, let's wrap this puppy up.
All right,
Thank
sounds
you.
good, Brian.
All right.
We'll see you.